York needs a rebrand.
I
Right,
hear
right,
a
right.
rebrand is
Listen,
coming to New York. Oh, let me not get there. Actually, we're recording. Let me not get.
New York needs a rebrand. That's all I got to say. When are they going to do a brand refresh?
I thought
They need a lot of
that was
PR.
post-pandemic.
They've been writing out that I Heart New York for like what 100 years already.
No, now they have after the pandemic. They had is either New York or nowhere.
No, that was always a brand.
Was it?
Is that a separate brand or is that New York specifically?
It's not the same people. New York or nowhere. Well, it's like the new I Heart New York.
Correct. That's what I just said.
Yeah, but it's not the same person.
No. I didn't say the same person. I'm saying like the rebrand of like a New York, like I heard
And
New York.
not only
yeah,
that, but like that definitely didn't catch on because I don't know about it. You know what's interesting is like actually I've gotten into really great conversations with people lately in response to their reposts. That new repost feature on Instagram is really cool.
So actually, dumb question. I've been obviously reposting, but what is does the algorithm doesn't automatically serve your
No,
repost? It just is more likely to recommend it.
I bet you didn't know this, and you're gonna probably go back and rethink all of your reposts because if you go to your profile right now, it's there.
Is it really?
Yeah, every
Oh,
single one. I had to go and unrepost some reposts because I was like, "Holy shit!"
That's what I'm
This
saying.
is
I'm
not
gonna
nice
go
for
back and
everybody.
yeah.
But why are you afraid to keep those reposts there?
Bro, listen, we just have there's just certain things that you share and certain things that you're just like, I'm in agreement with this.
Repost is this podcast.
Well, exactly. That's
But but you're talking about reposts on Instagram or reposts on
Instagram.
TikTok?
No, Instagram.
Yeah, I see what you
Oh,
mean. Now there's a whole section for reposts.
Right. And all
Oh
of your
shit.
reposts are there. Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden it became really real. Like I was like, oh man, people can go back into my history and learn me. Because one thing is like your posts, which are all
Yeah.
obviously hyper filtered and controlled. And then when you get into this, look at Pedro back there. He's like checking all his reposts.
I'm worried.
He's like, oh shit, bro, my girlfriend's gonna see something she's not supposed to see. Like that's the reality, right? Because now you kind of get into this habit of like repost, like, oh yeah, I agree with that, repost. And sometimes you're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not thinking about it, and then you're just like all of a sudden you're like, oh man.
See, like to me, I didn't know that, so I'm glad, and that's why I was asking because like I think there's some certain things that I repost that there's political stuff, there's whatever, but I don't really mind too much because I'm not necessarily reposting anything too extremes. It's more of like but like what sometimes there's just funny shit like me and my brothers look at that is just like super well, but that cuts to the main issue too, like in comedy, like you see that shit with like when Dave Chappelle was trying to be canceled for the trans stuff. It's like, bro, at what point like comedy, right? Like, at what point is just being able to just laugh at certain things from a satirical perspective or not? And like, yeah, agreed. I think we're lying. But I'm glad you told me that because I had no freaking clue.
I'm telling you, I discovered this the other day, and I was like, wait, what have I reposted? Because sometimes it's like midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., you're half asleep, or you were sleeping and you woke up, and then you start scrolling, and then you just like repost.
Yeah, ha, repost.
Right, yeah. But then all of a sudden, like, oh man, there's receipts right now. Like, I gotta go,
Like,
delete these receipts because people are gonna get offended.
I mean,
the
And I don't know.
CEO of BG.
Isn't there a lot
has
of times
reposted.
that you'll see like videos that you think are super interesting and that you want to repost, but then it's like, they're gonna think I'm going off the deep end.
Yeah, exactly.
You send me stuff on TikTok.
On TikTok, I get a lot of stuff about like how the world order is, the world order and tokenization with Bitcoin and how they want to tokenize like all assets.
That's just your FYP, man. That's just like what
we're gonna call it the Fern Cancel Corner.
The Fernspiracy. The Fernspiracy.
Fernspiracy. There you go. That could be your new TikTok name, Fernspiracy.
Man. All right, should we get started for Carlos?
Oh, we already started. What do you mean? Let's we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I mean, look, we were talking about cancel culture. We're talking about cancel culture.
Well,
and one of the big things was Cracker Barrel got canceled.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Almost got canceled, right?
Almost got canceled because they changed their logo. Right?
Well, I would say technically got canceled. Oh, the new logo did get canceled, right? Like they for better or worse, they got canceled. Kind of like not too long ago when Tropicana, like their redesign got canceled. Like
Tropicana got canceled.
Yeah, remember when they did that whole like redesign where they went from the straw with the orange, and then they decided to go like full blown like the glass or something like that, and people were like, "What the hell is this?" They couldn't even recognize that there was Tropicana in the stores, and they lost like $30 million.
Yeah, that was a while back. Yeah, but I do remember that.
See, so who gets fired in that instance?
Well, the CMO for sure.
No.
That's not
even if it's not his fault. I mean, listen, it's one of those. To me, it's one of those situations where like when you do good, your team gets credit. When things go bad, you get all the blame. Like that's like whether it's his fault or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always have to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think people are trying to do the best thing. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And it doesn't work out. I think that even because of the environment that we live in, it's easy. Like it's just one little spark and something that could have been great. Now it's not, So it's also the narrative, how you roll it out, like how do people perceive it. So then if it's successful, then you did it right. Obviously you had but I think that sometimes it's out of your control as well. I think that sometimes like public backlash, there's political things behind things. There's like counterculture against canceling and then canceling. I think brands struggle with all those things,
Yeah, but I think that the motives behind these rebrands is really what's creating all of this friction to begin with, because you're trying to remarket a brand to a younger generation that's their first instinct is cancel. That's their first instinct.
Like that
they don't want to. They are the counterculture of culture, right?
But or the opposite. I mean, you're trying to get your older audience to remain while trying to capture a newer audience, and your older audience is the one that's saying you're leaving me behind. Right. Your heritage, you're abandoning our heritage, our story, everything there for modernization, and you're forgetting me. So that's the backlash. And then the new people don't identify with it anyways, because the way you think it's a logo, and it has a lot more to do with other things, right? Like the conversation, participation, whatever that might be.
I think that the new generation actually wants to cancel in that sense because they have like this sense of nostalgia that they want to like hang on to that's almost like not really theirs, and they want everything to stay kind of like with that vintage, that older brand, the retroness of it. And I've seen that with a lot of rebrands that have happened. But I don't think that Gen Z is the one that's like complaining about it. Like Gen Z is the one.
Can you say it's not really theirs when, like, all right, so let's stick on the Cracker Barrel topic, right? Like my older daughters, 27 and 25, long story for the audience, but 27 and 25, they grew up going to Cracker Barrel, all the ballet trips and road trips and right. For them, that's a nostalgic point for them. Those are memories, sitting outside playing checkers, like it's a certain memory that they have. So you can't say that it's not theirs.
But I'm not talking about them. And I think that's something that happens to me a lot when I think about Gen Z. The range is very big. And it got to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm Gen Z, but I'm barely Gen Z, right? So Gen Z right now is also like 18, 17. Yeah. And I think that when you look at it from, oh, Gen Z is 17 and 18 and they're on TikTok and they're just finding something that they want to talk about, that's what they're going to grab. And I think with that backlash from Gen Z was the lower end of Gen Z.
But were they the main focus of the backlash,
I think to Fern's point, it was the heritage people. It was people Correct. Like me and older who were like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. And then it's kind of, and I was just wanting to add that it's also difficult for the brand, because I don't think this just is somebody's like, oh, you know what? Let's change the logo. It's like these guys are sitting in a boardroom. Hey, our figures with the young demographics are not really growing. What's happening? And then they're like, hey, our brand, I'm sure they have a meeting. They're like, our brand doesn't translate well with the younger generations. They see us as old. They see us as a staple of the past. And so they go and they try to renew it. So it's also
Right,
like
but
they're trying to bring in the new people, but to Carlos' point too, it's like sometimes like people say what they want to say that they would do or how they feel, but they don't do what they say. You know what? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and at
Right?
the end of the day, like they're not gonna go to the store and buy the orange juice or the
Exactly, but
Cracker
they'll be
Barrel.
online like keyboard warriors trying to like,
They
hey,
are, right?
cancel you guys, but they're not going to the store either. So it's like, how do you win that? I mean,
You
well,
know
but
what?
that's
Like
what I'm saying. Like,
talking about what we talked about last episode with experiential, I'm wondering why brands immediately go to that rebrand instead of trying to find like alternative ways to bring in that newer generation or that younger demographic, doing experiential, doing more things targeted towards them through digital, community, social, since that's where they are. I
yeah.
But
understand that they immediately go to that rebrand, but I wonder.
because I think not all brands can participate in an experience. Like you can't get Cracker Barrel to participate in an experiential event unless they're hosting it at their
Right,
location,
but I bet
right?
you can do something fun with it.
well, so two things with that, right? The first thing that comes to mind to me is, I understand we have kind of that disconnect between generations, but that's the reality that we live in. So to what degree is that just a failure of planning from the company's perspective, right? Like obviously the business is showing cracks. They want to reach people like, hey, let's just appeal with a fresh new look, and a fresh coat of paint doesn't necessarily address, right, the cracks in the business, right? So yes, you have people that, like your daughters, Ben, who have, a connection to Cracker Barrel because of, traveling and sports, but they may not necessarily be going on their own fruition or on their own. Them changing the logo is not going to change that, right? So like I think that there's a lack of planning there, lack of kind of diving deeper. And then on the flip side, on the experiential piece, I think that, a part of that issue is, yes, maybe Cracker Barrel is not going to be part of a pop-up experience, right now, but doesn't mean that their in-store experience also doesn't play into what their brand does, right? So maybe they don't have to go and think about, hey, let's build out a pop-up somewhere, but maybe, hey, how do we create when people do come in here more engaging so that, the logo itself isn't, mismatching with the decor once you actually get into the space, right?
I agree with that, and that's a great way to bring up what Domino's just did, right? Because Domino's didn't do the most. They brightened colors and worked on messaging and came up with some cool new packaging, and that was sufficient. Like it really didn't require this whole new look. They didn't change the Domino numbers from 1 and 2 to 5 and 3. Because of like it wasn't about that. It was about something that was simple enough, would attract attention, would resonate with a newer audience without disconnecting itself from its roots and what it's built for decades.
You know
So
what's funny? Like, I don't know if you
that's
guys
the point.
remember this, but Crackle Barrel had such a good opportunity to do something huge for the younger generation when there was this trend, I think about like 2 or 3 years ago, when people would go to Crackle Barrel and put their own family photos in the frames.
Oh yeah,
You
Yeah.
remember that? Like, I feel like they could have done something really cool with that as like a
Yeah,
way
that would
to
have been dope.
go with the newer generation, or that's who was doing it on TikTok. It was like a whole trend that just they made the community made up.
well, I wonder if that trend was brand led.
It wasn't, because there was a point. It got to a point that like people were like, "Hey, like please don't change the photos on the frames." Like the
I
waiters
know, but that still can be brand led. You know what I
would
mean?
Yeah.
Remember, brands control a lot of the messaging a lot of times.
Inception.
You know
go.
what I
It was
mean?
Yeah.
awesome.
and
Like
and I think that that's the unfair point, right? Because we're kind of getting back to that, right? So like, who gets fired in that moment where Jaguar, for instance, was like a complete failure because of that same disconnect, same approach that Cracker Barrel did, and a lot of times, to Fern's point, it's the board of directors making a call internally, putting pressure on a CEO or a new CEO to deliver something new
CMO.
that then, or no, or even,
Yeah.
but even from the CEO. I mean, in Cracker Barrel's
it was a new CEO.
case, it was the CEO, it wasn't the CMO, right? And then that gets just trickled down, and now Cracker Barrel hired 3 agencies to kind of do this whole new rebrand and relaunch and all of this other stuff. Everybody got fired. Everybody got fired. And where did it really start? So I think a lot of times it's the disconnect in the intention of why are we doing this rebrand, number one. And that doesn't get spoken about enough, because there is a huge disconnect a lot of times in marketing initiatives and marketing programs that don't connect to the business objectives. And whether it's a small, brand or a publicly traded brand, the reality is at all scales, there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the boardroom and marketing. There's a disconnect between shareholders and marketing. There's a disconnect between private equity firms and marketing. There's a disconnect between, just who is making the decisions and running the company and what they see as a necessity versus what really needs to happen from a marketing perspective. And then agencies go through the extent of doing an insane amount of research, because I know that we do an insane amount of research. The CMOs go back and forth with the agencies for months, sometimes over a year, to get it right, to launch it, because the board is the one that's really pushing it. And now we're having these conversations where, well, somebody's head has to roll, and it's the agency, it's the CMO. CEO is still sitting pretty, and this is not a knock on anybody, because I don't like, but it's just to bring awareness and attention to the fact that there needs to be bigger conversations had.
Yeah, but I would also venture to say that I bet you that my instinct is that the branding agency, the ad agency, or the marketing agency brought up a lot of these things that they failed at committing to. Right. So I think one of the things that they struggled with was committing to doing it in a way that was effective and that was going to bring real change. And it's not just, putting lipstick on a pig, because the reality is that if the branding in the stores is not really reflective, if when people are questioning on it, you're doing mixed messaging, which I was reading about them. They were like, no, but we're going to leave the old logo in the menus, but then we're going to put the new logo in other places. Like, all of that just sounds like you're really not sure what you're doing, and you're not communicating effectively with your customers, your vision for the new brand, right? And it's not connecting.
Well, Fern, you said something, and I want to pose a question to you three about this, right? And you said something about committing, right? Like, for these brands being able to commit in a way to either the changes or the strategy or the brand. And I go back to then what Gato was saying in regards to attracting the heritage, well, on YouTube, and attracting the heritage audience, and then, needing to kind of change and attract the new one. And with that in mind, I would, play devil's advocate and say, do you think that maybe Jaguar succeeded, right? And I say that because while they got a lot of pushback, especially when you're changing who you're trying to target, you're at some point you can't have it both ways. You can't win the new and take the old. Maybe you could play in the middle if you're like a Coca-Cola, right, where you have such broad appeal. But I read something recently that talked about how Jaguar has started to see more an uptake with younger, more affluent buyers, right? So if what they were going after was affluent younger buyers, yeah, they had all this public backlash, but if at the end of the day they're playing the long game and they're committed to it, they didn't revert back, they didn't change anything logos back, they've anything doubled down. Is it a matter of time will tell if they truly did succeed, and we just knee-jerk reaction because of cancel culture and people's, just such a stark change? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, they had a 97.5% drop from last year to this year in sales. So I wouldn't say
97.
They're doing great.
That sounds like a lot, man. 97 sounds like
that just a recession.
There was a 97.5% year-over-year drop in as of April 2025. So
maybe it's the economy.
I'm going to go to Fern's Corner and verify this.
Yes. Please give us the Fern stats.
Fern stats.
I need to know, Fern. I need to know, was there any uplift on the younger 18 to 34 audience?
I mean, that obviously there could have been a lift, but
right, but the business is still suffering. Correct.
right? You're talking about Jaguar, who is a brand that has been celebrated for. They made it past so many other brands, like in the auto space, right? They've succeeded far beyond. Think about it, right? Like think about all the brands that we grew up with that no longer exist. Saturn, for one, right?
Yep.
Let's just say Saturn. They're still here, and now they have a 97.5% drop. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's aggressive.
Is Saturn a car brand?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Gen Z, bro.
No, but Saturn is for like the outdoor. Saturn? No, Saturn's not here. I'm thinking Subaru.
No, yeah, you're thinking Subaru. No, he's saying Saturn's the car brand. Saturn was the car brand, not like
it's a rocket
Saturn
brand.
the planet. Saturn the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is it taking me to NASA?
It says here that for maybe it's just the whole brand, because it says here that sales for Jaguar are up 38.5% in the last 12 to 18 months. And that global sales for our brands are up 22%. Yeah. So with young buyers, sales have dropped off 10% actually. Yeah. But overall, their sales are up, at least in the United States, 38.5%.
So again,
buy all the old cars that have the old logo before they're gone.
And what did that say? And what did that say about a brand, right? So what did that say about a brand that's willing to stick to its position and say we wanted to do this rebrand and we stand by what we did, versus the brand that says like we're gonna retract what we did and we're just gonna go back to what and react that way.
I have a take on that, and I think that and this is just my own personal view. I think that a lot of people confuse planning with strategy. Mm-hmm. And now assuming that a brand did the work and did the consumer research and actually identified a problem, ultimately you have to come down to a strategy. A strategy by definition has risks, right? Because you're making assumptions on the market, on the need, consumer sentiment, and you're trying to position the brand just around the corner to kind of beat that. If you're planning on historical, you're just trying to continue the trend and project where that growth is going to be. So I think that a brand that has done the research and is willing to stick to their guns is really betting on their strategy, their business model, their assumptions of the future, and you have to give them credit, right? Because at the end of the day, it's very easy to commend the companies who do it and have great success, like an Apple back in the day with an iPhone. But just like Apple, there was Burberry had maybe to their perspective they were planning, right? They were planning that the keyboard was going to be dominant all throughout, and it failed, right? So it's easy to kind of laugh at the failures and then commend the winners as genius, but the difference is that they stuck to their strategy, right? And obviously the work that went behind there. Now, what does it make a good, if you find yourself in that situation, right? What makes a good rebrand? What makes a good positioning? What are those pitfalls that people are missing? Like what would you name as?
I know Gato hasn't stopped talking about the Domino's rebrand, so I'll let her just dive in.
I love the Domino's rebrand. First of all, the video that they launched with, I thought was perfect because it just showed like the old packaging becoming brighter. I love that they did now like the pizza boxes as the Domino's. I thought that was an incredibly innovative way to tie in the original logo and the revised like brighter one. They put you can't say domino without and I thought that was very, very thought out and very strategic. And it's something that you can tell like the team really was trying to see how they can elevate and make this brand memorable in comparison to other fast food brands that have similar sayings or catchphrases. So I really like Domino's. Like I was actually thinking about getting a Domino's pizza later today.
Listen,
I miss
I like Domino's, but I'll keep my comments.
No, I think like, let's talk about product, right? Because product also counts for a lot. Like, you can do a great rebrand, but if the product is not there to support it, it doesn't really matter. So a lot of times, like, they need to go back and revisit that. And for me, I could say Domino's can also get away with something like that, because if you, I don't know if they're the best pizza. My opinion, I prefer Domino's over a Pizza Hut or a Papa John's or
they're
anything
just
else.
reliable, chill. Not
And
great.
I want everybody to know that Pedro, who's all the way in Chile and is originally from Venezuela, is raising his hand in agreeing with that Domino statement, because Fafa, thin crust with mushrooms and black olives. I'm telling you, like, it's one of those things that I don't know. I'm just saying.
One of the things I'll tell you about, because I'm a fan of Domino's as well, but I think a lesson with Domino's that of what we're talking about is that, I don't know if obviously you guys remember a couple years back, this is not their first rebrand, right? They did the whole rebrand where they changed their creative, their recipe, made it more flavorful, the crust, like a couple years, like maybe I say a couple, but let's be honest, probably like 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
Probably
but I say all that to say probably more, right?
Yeah, because that was Crispin Porter who did that.
Yikes.
Yeah, exactly.
Time flies, guys. Time flies.
Yeah. What year was that?
Right. You weren't born yet.
I think you were like in elementary school. That was probably like 15 years ago. No, legitimately, that was like 15 years ago.
2010, yeah.
2010, 15 years ago.
Wait.
Crispin Porter at the time.
Was the old one?
Yes.
Does that look legit?
Yeah, that was old one. Well, the one that you see there that was like just the Domino and then it says like Domino's Pizza, that's back from the days of when they had the Noid. Remember the Noid?
Yeah.
Look up the Noid. That was a whole thing too, because that's a staple and a half right there. I mean,
boxes.
Yeah.
Well, but so my point being that, like, they started changing their recipe. They started going very mobile friendly. They started experimenting with robots. They started being very innovative. So they, over time, made their brand young, fresh, innovative. They started doing the pizza tracker on the app. All of a sudden, you do a brand refresh, and it's less of a brand refresh, but to me, it's more of like a slight realignment to the colors, the tones of but like the personality of the brand fits still, right? Like, it's still young, it's still cool, it's still innovative, or at least that's how they try to portray themselves. So it aligns with the inner culture and like the tone of the brand
and that's the point right there, because there's a lot of heritage brands that walk away from why they were founded and what their purpose was. And that connection to the consumer, that shouldn't change, man. That shouldn't change. I mean, we see it with Vicky. Vicky crosses generations and people still saying the same thing. I've had a cake every single year from Vicky for my birthday. Like, I'm never gonna. You have people moving to another state and wishing that they can get Vicky and writing every day. When are you gonna open in New York? When are you gonna open in Arkansas? Like, it's the craziest thing, So when you're going through that rebranding process, you cannot abandon the heritage and where the brand came from. And I think that a lot of times that's what they do, thinking like, well, we have to abandon who we were in order to be able to connect with Gen Z. And that's when you know that there's a misalignment in the business objectives.
Yeah, I think it's also the like, going back to your point about why are you doing it, right? So from the little bit that I can see, it makes a lot of sense about the position that Domino's took, right? So they went out in 2010, they did surveys. And the interesting thing is that you're going to see, based on the surveys that they did and their turnaround, this whole campaign was called the pizza turnaround. It's the surveys that they did found that people thought their pizza wasn't good. It was bad pizza.
Crazy.
So based on research, right, they said, okay, we have to change perception, right? But perception is, in a rebrand, it's more than just a logo, right? It's more than just a packaging. It's your product, like what you were saying, Ben. It's about consumer experience. Hansel, when you're talking, and somebody mentioned the pizza tracker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also like your experience with the brand and how do you see it with the messaging? Do you relate to it? Like what Caro says, she loved the video that came out, right? So it's definitely a great case study for anybody who wants to look at what it really means to rebrand. It's not just the logo, it's not just packaging, it's your messaging, it's your product, it's everything that's around your brand. If you're trying to reinvent yourself to connect with people, right? So Cracker Barrel, maybe what they needed to do, and I'm sure they did, and maybe for some reason it just didn't stick. It's like, okay, why are we not gaining the new generations? Are we not being, are the older generations stop bringing their newer generations out here? Maybe their campaign needed to be about, they're a family brand, like a Vicky brand, right? It's like about memories, and they probably needed to focus more on that than modernizing their logo. And maybe they could have made small tweaks to their logo, but they could have been more in line with, okay, how do we make sure that we continue to be a family brand for moments and celebrations and for trips and for unforgettable moments.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's exactly what
Listen, I have a free idea for Domino's. What we do is, for you get life-size Domino boxes, and you go to the Heights and just do a Domino's tournament with with a bunch of Dominicans with Domino pizza boxes. I'm telling you, culturally relevant, banger. Put some plátanos, some slices, banger.
Domino's is
You
doing
know how
it
they have
right.
like
We need to
giant
help.
chess pieces?
We need to help Cracker Barrel.
Yeah,
Cracker Barrel.
we need to help
Maybe
Cracker
we need to
Barrel.
bring a
Domino's,
Domino night to
they
Cracker
got
Barrel.
all the good
And then
ideas.
put Domino's outside in the rocking chairs or something instead of checkers.
I think that people forget that it's what Fern said about generational brand. And when let's say I'm gonna go and order Pizza Hut, for an example, because my grandma always ordered Pizza Hut and my mom always ordered Pizza Hut because my grandma always ordered Pizza Hut, and so I'm gonna order that as well. If I moved here and I only buy a certain brand of mango juice because that's the one that I saw growing up, and I know exactly what it looks like when I go to the store. The second that's not what it looks like anymore, I'm screwed because I don't even know what it's called. So things like that, like Vicky, where that's the bakery that you went to growing up, and that emotional tie makes all of the difference when you're gonna, specifically with something like a product, a restaurant, in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, you think of it, right? Like, think of a brand that you wish was still here, right? Like, if you can identify that and that feeling, like
Toys
going
R
to
Us.
a rebrand like that, it's almost the same thing. It's almost like, damn, like you're killing the one thing that I love that. Like, I miss that. I want that back.
You guys have
Where's
kids.
it at?
Ben, you have little kids. So do you still have like the squeezable Go-Gurts?
No, doesn't exist
Right. So
anymore.
that to me is like my childhood. That to me was something that I was like, oh my god, one day I'm gonna get these for my kids. And it was
That's
like
like
just
5 years ago. Like 5 years.
for real, they
No?
stopped 5 years ago? What? Dude.
No, but think about the resurgence also of like candy, right?
For
So
gummies.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know what? I used to watch you guys. I'm sure you guys watched it too, Unwrapped. And I used to think to myself all the time, like, oh, you hear these CEOs or like these CEOs saying like, oh, we do 10 million cases a year, and you're like, but where are people buying this, dude? Like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? But the reality is that there's that market doesn't die because it does become generational. Something that I introduce my kids to, they're gonna want to continue to look for that. Especially, like, man, my grandfather was like such an influence on my life. That guy lived by having a McDonald's apple pie all the time. Like, he would go and he would get his McDonald's apple pie and a coffee. He wouldn't eat anything else. Like, that was just like his like
That's awesome.
3 o'clock sweet treat, right? Go, and he would sit down and he would take it home. It wasn't something he ate in the car. It wasn't in a rush. He would take it home and he would enjoy that apple pie. And man, sometimes I see it on the menu and I'm like, damn, you know what? I should order one of those. And I never do. But if that apple pie went missing from the menu, I would be like, damn, like now I just lost that connection that I had, that memory that I had. And I think a lot of people feel the same way when you see a rebrand. It's like, why would you do that? Like, there was nothing wrong with it.
But to the brand's point, because you're not buying it, bro. So go buy some apple pie. Go buy the apple pie, and it'll be there so that it can affect their bottom line. If nobody's buying the apple pie, you're just talking about.
Well, now we have different. There's different ingredients in there that didn't exist. When I was 6.
One thing that I will say, and at this point, probably something for another product, right? But I think, Caro, you said something that triggered me, which was, to what degree is the issue not necessarily the rebrand, but how do you reach those audiences to fulfill the actual need, right? Like, I think something that Vicky launched recently was the bowls, right? I think that's awesome, right? You're not changing who Vicky's are. You just, adapt into some of the consumer needs, right? Like, could have Cracker Barrel done something different without having to completely blow up the brand and still kind of bring that traditional home cooked meal in a different way, right? Like, how do you explore different product offerings, different business avenues that extend above and beyond the core value, right? But yeah, just a thought.
No, it's true, man. That's 100% true. Because when we redid that Platicos, shoot, like we actually thought of how do we bridge this generational gap and still compete against a Chipotle and compete against a Pollo Tropical and a Diced and
You know what
all
I'm
the.
saying? Yeah.
And for us, it was like, okay, well, we just got to tie it back. Like, it's the same place that you've been going to all your life, the same place that your grandmother remembers, an expectation of standards and cultural relevance. That's why you want this one versus all the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with, man, a bowl is a bowl, man. It's rice, it's beans, it's, a protein. Yeah, there's different flavors and different, but I can't tell you that I'd be more satisfied with one over the other, and I probably should take the stance of Vicky's way better. But that's the reality, I think, of the general consumer. Like, today I'm in the mood for Dice, tomorrow I'm in the mood for Chipotle, right? Like, it's just what you're in the mood for sometimes. But if you're not relevant, if you're not connecting with the consumer, how do you even become an option?
Correct.
How do you even become an option? So I think that to segue into a closure, the reality is that in these brand refreshes and with all of the effort that goes behind it and the years sometimes of planning, to Fern's point, I mean, if Domino started this based on a survey that they did 5 years ago, or when
15 years
15 years ago,
yeah,
okay, they've been on this journey to get to this point. There has to be more substance. It can't just be like, how do we connect to the newer generation? Let's abandon everything, let's move on. It has to be, why are we doing this? Why do we need to reconnect? How do we do that in a way without losing who we are? Because just because there's a new generation out there, there's a new consumer, doesn't mean that you abandon who you are as a brand to connect with them. It's no, help them connect with who you are. You can't change that. You know what I mean? So I think that, and we can definitely talk on this even longer, but it really does start in a boardroom, and I think that that's something to really dig into.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, on that note, we'll have to reconvene next time so we can double click on that, Ben. So you can walk us through real quick as to how we should be having those conversations, or how our audience should be having those conversations.
Absolutely. Well, subscribe, don't miss out, and
let us know which rebrand you liked or didn't like, and if you don't like Domino's, I will be not liking your cup. No, I'm kidding. But let us know what your order are. I want to see if we can have some new orders to my Domino regulars out there.
Well, actually, I have my own pizza oven. I don't eat that.
Is that where you reheat Domino's?
Bro.
Hey, friend.
You ask, or the next time you order Domino's, ask for it half baked. Here's a hack, guys. If you ask, you can do this at any pizza place. Ask for it half baked, and then when it gets to you, you throw it in the oven for another 10 minutes, and then it's like if it just came out of their oven.
You'll be like, Chef Fern.
Nah.
I want to see a Sora 2 video of you pulling out of a Domino's delivery next, please.